Hi, I'm Mike Casper. We're in the East Peoria Weld Shop again live. Next week I will be down in Springfield, Missouri at our Springfield, Missouri campus talking to Alex Phillips. He's a weld instructor down there. A couple of takeaways from last week. If you remember, we talked about a couple of processes, stick welding and TIG welding. Today we're going to concentrate on the TIG side of it. Another takeaway is I talk with my hands a lot, so I really don't I don't know what to do with them, kind of Ricky Bobby style, Anyway, I'm wearing a camo shirt today. My wife said this morning, oh, I hope they can see you, so I'll steal her joke. So anyway, last week we talked about stick and TIG. I'd like to kind of back up a little bit and let you guys understand there is a whole lot of stuff going on besides me striking an arc. That's what we do here at MTI. We have an hour of classroom, 4 hours of lab. And so that hour of classroom kind of tells guys why and who and what and where why we do things the way we do. And most of the time it's because we have a code book that we follow. So it's, if you're in the piping industry, it's ASME. If you're in the structural, it's AWS. So they've written a lot of rules so the welder really doesn't have to think. All he's got to do is do, which is great for a guy like myself. Anyway, so last week we talked about stick welding and a couple of things hitting on that. The current flows differently in both processes, okay? So in the stick welding process, the current's coming up from the base into the stick rod. We're going to TIG weld today. The current, remember now, we call this a TIG torch. What we got going on today is there's where the tungsten, or there's where all the heat's coming. So the current is flowing out of this needle sharp piece of tungsten here. Okay, so my son is constantly asking me, Dad, can you weld this? Can you weld that? And sometimes I'm familiar with it, and sometimes I have no idea if it's even weldable or if I can or not. One of those things is last week I told you we were going to make it fun today, and we're going to weld some razor blades together. So some of you say, well, those really aren't razor blades, and you're right. This is a utility blade, okay? The package says, if you can see that against my camo or whatever, that is 24 thousandths of an inch thick, okay? So that's really, really thin. As a pipe welder, unless we're doing sanitary tubing, which is something that they do in food grade, like maybe a craft plant or something like that, where they just butt this together and TIG weld it out. Aside from that, us heavy wall boilermaker welders, we don't see much of this stuff here. So I do some automotive repair, some sheet metal work at home and stuff, and so that's still pretty thin by those standards. Okay, so what are we going to do? What am I doing today? We're TIG welding. Like I said, we got some current coming out of that needle. We got two of those. So the utility blade, I butted it up. So this is called a butt weld. So I've tacked it here and here. The reason why we tack it is because if I didn't, it would move. The heat would warp this so bad it would actually look like a banana while I was trying to weld it. Okay, so one might bow down and one might bow up, and a gap on this thin of steel would be disastrous. Okay, so we tack this to hold it together. So I'm going to weld across here. I'm going to make a weld across here, and then we'll check it out. Okay. Now, aside from yesterday, over in Brownsburg, I did a little bit over there with Mr. Drew. But I probably welded 2 or 3, and I did a different kind of weld. So Mr. Pauly today told me that he thought the guys would like to see it butt welded together. So we're going to butt weld this together. Okay, Argons Fluid. You can hear it. It protects the molten steel. I got a piece of 16th TIG wire, 316, pretty thin in diameter, pretty flexible. I'm going to strike my arc, and I'm going to weld this across here, okay? Hopefully, it looks decent when I'm done. All right, here we go. All right, it's going to be hot. So what do we got? We have a weld going across here. It's penetrated. So I welded the front side of this right here. and it's on the back side. So the weld actually penetrated all the way through. Now you can also see some of that distortion that we talked about. If you were wanting this to be flat when you got done, this is not the way to do this, okay? You would tack this in several small places, and you may even, it would have to remain cool. So, you know, that's something that you could clamp it down while you welded it to control that, and there's several methods to do that. But anyway, here in this shop, we just don't have a lot of that. Here's one of the first ones I did. That turned out a little better than the live action. But anyway, again, you can see the penetration there, okay? So penetration is a big deal in our house here. Why? Because when we bring two pieces of metal together, again, getting back to here, this weld zone is actually thicker than the base metal. So I have a little weld on top and a little weld on the bottom. So that weld zone is actually thicker than both sides. Thicker, stronger. Okay, so that's what we want to do as welders. We want to leave something stronger than when we found it. Okay. Last week some guys commented, I haven't heard for a long time. I welded with some guys about 20 some years ago. They taught me a lot. A couple of them said, you know, gave me a shout out or whatever, and I really appreciate that. I like the comments, made me feel good. And anyway, so next week we'll talk about some 60-10. And it's a completely different process, almost a polar opposite of TIG welding. This is really nice. A lot of welders really enjoy TIG welding, especially maybe some TIG stainless on a paper mill. That was one of my first jobs I ever did. You know, welders call it rollout. So I was in a jack stand TIG welding for weeks on end. It was a really good job. And then I got put in a different situation and at a powerhouse, and my world turned upside down. It's a totally different kind of job, totally different kind of weld. So next week, I told you we were going down to SMO and talk about some 60-10. What this does is, it's important that this first weld, these are two separate pieces of pipe, it's important that this first weld join these together in the right way. Won't spend a lot of time on it, but anyway, that's all I got for today. I would encourage you guys to go to midwesttechnical.edu for our website. Check out the welding. If you got any questions, give our entrance people a call, and we can show you around the shops and answer any questions that you have, okay? I'm going to leave you with a little bit of advice. You know, it sounds kind of cheesy or whatever, but I would say run your welder, not your mouth. Okay? We'll talk to you next week. Thank you.